Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today let's go back in time and take a look at the top 5 builds of all time. Now, before we begin, there are some rules. Rule number 1, the build must have been available to play for the entire patch to qualify. And rule number 2, it has to have a record of being pushed legitimately to also qualify. Also, as a side note, some of the footage will be very old, so I apologize if the quality is below the normal standard on this channel. But alright, let's get it started. Coming in at number 5, we have Glacier on the Sorcerer. Now, this used to be a very powerful build, and it capped out at around 660 waves, and we've seen it pushed around there a few times by a few different people. Now, it basically was a 3-hit skill that froze the enemies, did great crit damage, and gave you a bunch of ward in the process, which allowed for you to have high survivability, kill things extremely quickly, and it pushed you really high in the arena. Unfortunately, the nerf hammer found it in patch 7.7, reducing a lot of its damage. In 7.8, it had some of its nodes changed, and by patch 7.9, it had basically been obliterated when it received a fix when it was targetable. You were getting the extra crit damage, and once that got fixed, its damage definitely fell down in between the cracks, and it's just not a build that many people push anymore. Coming in at number 4, we have Misha's Forge Guard Abyssal Echo build. Now, back in 7.7 when this was pushed, no one thought the Forge Guard would ever get that high, and Misha came out of nowhere, pushing it beyond the boundaries that we even thought was possible. Now, unfortunately, after patch 7.7, there was a round of nerfs to the Forge Guard, and everything about this build changed. The Abyssal Echoes tree changed. Unfortunately, the mastery bonus for Forge Guard changed. Its passive tree changed. The way that you were able to stack all the damage over time with multiple stacks of Abyssal Echoes and it recasting so that you could just kill enemies very, very quickly with dots just went away basically overnight. And ever since then, unfortunately, the build has just never been the same and probably never will be the same. But back in its heyday, it was capable of pushing 770 waves, and it was an absolute beast, and that's why it's number 4 on our list today. Coming in at number 3, we have Foe's Death Wave Lich. Now, this build incorporated the brand new skill Death Seal in patch 7.8, and it was able to push 1,000 waves. This was so powerful that it would basically kill everything on your screen in just one hit, and the amount of leech that you could get from it would make you basically invulnerable for 3 seconds every time that the wave hit enemies. Unfortunately, this build was only available for one patch, patch 7.8, before Death Seal and Death Wave had numerous bugs that were inside of it that allowed the damage to get out of control. They were fixed, however they were in there for almost the entirety of the entire patch. And then some of the damage reductions, they put a 50% damage reduction for Death Wave in. The frequency of the wave was reduced, so it didn't hit as often. There were various changes made inside of the tree, and Death Wave pretty much crumbled to the nerf hammer, as most builds do, and it's no longer a top contender. However, like I said, in patch 7.8, when it pushed 1,000 waves, it was definitely a build that was meant to be on this list. Coming in at number 2, we have Shatter Strike Spellblade, and its huge amount of ward retention that was able to let it have hundreds of thousands of ward back in patch 7.6 and 7.7. Unfortunately, ward retention itself took some hits, in 7.8 and later, and these builds were no longer viable, but in their heyday they were pushing over 1,000 waves, and the record with Shatter Strike was 1,037 waves, putting it at the number 2 spot on this list. And as you can see in the gameplay, it was a build where literally you ran around, killed everything with Shatter Strike. The more hits the better, because the longer you were in the fight, the more ward that you gained, which allowed godly amounts of ward, so you could basically never die. And then at the same time, you had Mana Strike to get your mana back as quickly as possible. And coming in at the number 1 spot, and it should come as no surprise for those of you that have been around for a few patches, we have Lizard IRL's Soul Feast Lich. This build was impressive. It was basically invincible. You could basically go on forever. Lizard pushed it to 1,389 waves. Live on stream, he broke 1,000 waves with it multiple times, and basically you could just hit everything on the screen over and over and over again with Soul Feast, granting yourself godlike amounts of ward, making yourself invincible, applying dots on hit with Soul Feast, and allowing you to kill everything pretty much almost instantly after getting several hits on them, because the dots would just wipe them out, and it allowed you to just push on forever and ever and ever. Now, this build obviously is the number 1 build, but eventually all good things must come to an end, and this build in the number 1 spot was hit the hardest. It was hit so hard with the nerf hammer that nobody touches Soul Feast anymore. And that's going to wrap up our top 5 greatest of all time builds. If you like the content, make sure to put a like on the video, sub for more content, as there will be plenty more coming out, and again, thanks for watching.